Washington's offensive line will shock the Big Ten in 2025.
You are Locked On Huskies, your daily podcast on the Washington Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into another edition of the Locked On Huskies podcast. I'm Roman Tomashoff. That's Lars Hanson. He writes with me over at Huskies Wire. Thank you for making this your first watch or first listen of the day, as we are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And this episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKDOWNCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Lars, just a quick reminder to all the everydayers out there, make sure wherever you're getting this podcast, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, you click that subscribe button, click that little bell as well so you never miss when we post a new video. If you're on the audio only side of things, leave us a 5-star review and follow us on social media as well, because we've got a super fun mailbag show coming up, and that's the best way to make sure you can hit us up with any questions you might have. We're talking food, we're talking recruiting, we're talking uniforms, video games, everything, but we're going to start with a question from one of our fabulous insiders, the great Coke Greater Than Pepsi, over on Twitter, who asked us which position group will shock fans the most in 2025. And for me, I think it's the offensive line. I think people are still, a little bit concerned where there's young guys playing in terms of true freshmen, in terms of not all 5 positions have been solidified just yet, and there might be a rotation at certain spots. But I think there's so much talent when you just kind of look around the offensive line and you think about these young guys, whether it be John Mills, Champ Taulealea, who bring just such an extra just physical presence to this line. I'm really excited what it might look like this season.
Absolutely. I mean, it's one of those cases where it's going to get better, but how much better is it going to get? And I think it's a combination of talent acquisition and coaching change. Not that Brendan was bad, because I think obviously Brendan Carroll speaks for himself in terms of the ability to develop offensive linemen. But Michael Switzer does seem like kind of, like a young, fresh, revitalized kind of guy where you can look and see, we have all this young talent. We got some mature talent. This is the time to put it together. And I think you look at it specifically who they brought in, like that's why we're so positive about the offensive line, because you still have Max coming back. You still have the young guys. And Carver Willis. Like I think Carver is kind of the key that holds everything together. Guerin, both Hatchets, obviously. So you look at the offensive line, equally as healthy of a position, I think, as linebacker. And I think, when you look at, you're talking about the ability, the talent that's there, for me, it's linebacker, because you have Jacob Manu, you have X-Ray Alexander, you have Budal Lukta, probably 3 starters, but you're only going to have potentially 2 on the field at one time. So how do you get creative with that? And like you mentioned with the young guys, Xavier Training-Saleh, Jonathan Epperson, you have so much young talent, Donovan Robinson as well, a guy that when I saw him on the spring game, I was like,
yeah, he's
definitely played 5 games, but would it surprise me if he played more? No, because again, now that's more of a special teams thing, but just a guy that will be hard to keep off the field. And when you look at all the talent at that position, 2 healthy positions that will definitely surprise people as well.
Yeah, I like where you're going with that. And just a reminder for all the everydays out there, Donovan Robinson, real fun talent, listed as a safety right now, but certainly, as you said, is going to play a lot of linebacker. So let's move on to one here from Connor Schnewitt, who asks, predictions on who will have the second most receiving yards this year, behind Denzel, of course. Obvious everydayer right there, knowing that we like to challenge ourselves and push beyond the obvious. So I'll give you the floor first.
So I'm going to take the easy one, and it's to lead off what you said, because we talked about this before the show. If the offensive line improves, Omari Evans is an 800-yard, 50-catch, 6 touchdown receiver. And that's I'm just throwing numbers out there. My point in saying that is to say Omari has the potential to really become a true number 2 opposite of Denzel, not just because of Denzel, but because of everything that we're talking about. Damon knows how to put the ball there. Omari knows how to get open. And finally, now you're in an offense where receivers are more valued than just run blockers.
Yeah, absolutely. So I like where you're going with that, but I think all of those same cases, just everything that your argument is there, could be applied to Rasheed Williams as well. I look at Rasheed Williams and I just think where we've seen just 2 receivers, 2 pass catchers, you should say, because I know tight ends can work their way in there as well, really hogged the majority of targets in Jedd Fisch offenses in each of his 4 seasons as a head coach. And I feel like it could end up being a little bit different this year. But I think that Rasheed Williams has a real opportunity to break out and become that number 2 receiver, just from all the flexibility we've seen from him in spring ball, not just this season, but last year as well, where it just shows how much this coaching staff likes him, because they want to line him up inside. They want to line him up outside, and they just want to find ways to get the ball into his hands And I think this is the perfect year where there are so many questions about who that next guy is going to be for him to finally step up and emerge and say, I'm going to be that guy. I am that former, 4-star blue chip recruit who has just all of that ability to take the big step forward. So Huskies for Life here has a really great question that we don't have time to get into all of because that would be a show in and of itself, who asks, what are each of our positional coaches' strengths and weaknesses? So what I'm thinking we do here is let's talk coordinators. You take one, I'll take the other. I'll let you go first.
All right, I'll take Jimmie Dougherty. I think the trait that I like, that you can say is most positive about Jimmie, aside from, personality-wise, just him kind of being a down-to-earth person, is he seems very, like, he's that tip of the pyramid where even though you would think normally Jedd is, he's hearing all these different things. He knows what Jedd wants. He knows how to coach quarterbacks, but he also knows he's listening to JP and other guys. And so I think he is kind of that perfect coordinator to where he's not going to usurp Jedd ever, but he's also going to test Jedd. He's kind of going to be that good balance between the two. And I think that's important for an offensive coordinator, especially when you have a head coach that is the play caller, to make sure, like, hey, he's the eye in the sky. That's a pretty valuable trait.
Yeah, absolutely. And then what do you have on the other side there for the weaknesses?
The weaknesses, I almost in that same caveat, it's I wish Jimmie would be a little more assertive because I think there are times where, and I've known Jimmie going back to his days with Steve Sarkisian at Washington. So I'm proud of what Jimmie's been able to do and grow as a coach, especially under Jedd. But I do think, and Tom Pelissero, the era, obviously, coach tweeted me saying he had NFL opportunities. Take those opportunities, but take them under Jedd in terms of maybe say, hey, let's try this. Like, see if we can put a little more Jimmie, because I think a lot of it is Jedd, which is understandable. But I would love to see a little more input from Jimmie because I think, knowing how he likes to coach quarterbacks and do things, I just want to see a little bit more in that respect from him. Like, not that I'm not saying he's a pushover, right? Because I'm not insinuating that. But I think if he's got such a good voice and good experience, I almost want Jedd to empower him to say, hey, you know what do you think, in a more consistent way.
So I think I like what you're saying there. And just to, I don't want to push back. I want to build on that. I think that's one of the biggest reasons that you and I weren't shocked when he got this offensive coordinator job. It's to give him an opportunity to do more of that. So that gives me Ryan Walters, which, thank you. That was the side of the ball I wanted to talk about a little bit. Where the strengths, I think the strengths are very obvious in this case. He has already led a very high-ranking defense in the Big Ten with a very similar I just want to say crop of players that he has coming into this year at Washington. I would argue that what he has this season is better in terms of, I don't know if you have a top 5 pick on the roster on the defensive side in terms of what Devon Witherspoon was, but I think you have more NFL talent on this defense. And I think that he is going to really find a way to unlock that in so many different ways in terms of the pressure he's been able to create throughout his tenure as a defensive coach at Missouri, at Illinois, at Purdue as well, where people forget that the problem at Purdue was not the defense. Like, was Ryan Walters the best man for the job? No. And that's obviously one of the weaknesses here is maybe he is a career defensive coordinator, but I don't think that's a bad thing either. But you can look at that and just say, that could also just play out really well for Washington in the long term, where he's going to have this opportunity as the head coach of the defense. And that's kind of what he acted as at Purdue, and the offense would falter every week and the defense would get tired. And that's why the numbers, especially at the end of last season, didn't look at like just what you would expect them to be, especially after what the 2023 season was for them. So I think that Ryan Walters' biggest strength in essence can also be his weakness, is he's so focused on that side of the ball. Maybe those other opportunities aren't there for him, at least in the short term, but there's so much that I really like about what Jedd has done in going out and hiring him and saying, yeah, it didn't work out for you as a head coach, but come be the head coach of the defense here at Washington, and you can continue to do what you do best. So I'm really curious to see how that's going to play out this year.
Right. All things you were saying reminded me of the college football version of Steve Spagnuolo. Got one time as the head coach in the NFL, but revered as a defensive mind. And the one time he got that chance in St. Louis, team was moving to Los Angeles. There was no chance Steve Spagnuolo was going to have a legitimate shot. So I just wanted to say, when you talk about career assistants, that's honestly probably sometimes for the better. If that's what you're good at, just be that. And then if you want to take a head coaching job down the line when your kids are older and you don't really have to worry about family as much, then do that. But I think Ryan Walters is in the perfect situation right now.
On the other side of the break, we got a great question for our buddy Anthony Hale before we move on to recruiting. right after a message from our friends over at Monarch Money. Ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. That was one surprising thing I noticed when I started using Monarch was that I was just spending so much money on food delivery and other things like that. And that wasn't helping my health at all, but it also wasn't helping my finances. And since then, I've been able to build a much better savings account. And I am so grateful to Monarch for that. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKDOWNCollege at monarchmoney.com, 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKDOWNCollege for half off your first year. Lars, our buddy Anthony Hale had a great question here for us, where he says, on a scale of 1 to 10, how concerned are you with the trenches coming into the season, and juxtapose that to last year?
So I'm more confident in the offensive side. I'm more confident in the talent on the defensive side, but the coaching is kind of, like, not that I don't doubt Jason Kafusi's ability to coach, but it's just like, we haven't seen him paired with Ryan Walters before, so just kind of seeing how that all works out together. Like, I'm confident, but like, I guess on a 1 to 10 scale, I'm saying like a 5 or 6 on the defense and like a 7 or 8 on the offense, if that makes sense.
So I hear you, and I like where you're going on the offensive side of things. On the defensive side of things, I would say I am at a 7 or 8 as well, where Jason Kafusi has proven that he can develop this talent. And I think that's something where you look at who he was able to bring in from the portal. You add a really impressive nose tackle in Sione Kaho. You just need to keep him healthy. A guy who really can collapse the pocket in Ontario Thompson, and someone who's proven he can get consistent pressure in Taulealea away. So I'm at, you know what? I'll give it an 8 in terms of especially improvement over last season. And the biggest reason for that is something that we've talked about a lot over the last couple of months, and it's just the improved depth at the position. I think that that's something that's really important as we just continue to just look at what the trenches could be under Ryan Walters, where there is just so much more just reliance on pressure and reliance on a heavy defensive front as well.
Oh, I agree. I mean, like the bodies, it's not for a lack of talent that I'm saying it's a 5 or a 6. I'm just more or less saying, especially pairing with the 5 down front, knowing what you have last season, where sometimes it was almost a 0 down front. I'm just like, I don't doubt Jason Kafusi, but it's just how do you marriage all of it together? And then also in such a quick amount of time. This isn't a, hey, well, let's wait 2 years or wait like 18 months to see when it truly comes together. It's got to come together quick because, like you mentioned, you brought in all this talent. It's not young talent. It's veteran talent. It's guys that got 1 year left, maybe 2 max. So to me, it's like that's why the onus is on, Again, ask me this question at the end of fall camp. It's probably a 7 or an 8, but right now, like talent is 7 or 8. Everything coming together, I'd probably say is like a 6 or a 7.
So Greg from Saints Academy in Portland asks, can you talk more about the kicking game and where we're at in that department? Big part of the team that doesn't get much coverage. What is this coaching staff doing to improve Grady Gross?
Chris Petrelli. I mean, well, first of all, let's just give
not even just Chris Petrelli either. Greg Froelich as well deserves a big shout out in that department.
Absolutely. I mean, Ben, the mustache itself deserves its own angle. But with that being said, and shout out to Greg for that. That's out of respect, obviously. But with that being said, you clearly you invested in the resources in the special teams. And by the way, you brought in 2 punters and no kicker. So that clearly means like Jedd's like, you know what, Grady, you missed about 6 or 7 kicks by 3 yards last season. So it wasn't like Grady was truly atrocious. Obviously, not Grady's 2023 standard, but I think Grady 2023 earned Grady 2024. So in 2025, give him the resources, give him one last chance. He is a senior, so it's not like he's gonna, I don't even know if he'd have a bonus year at this point because I don't know. Okay, exactly. So I think that was also a good way to do it. Where again, what was that one kicker that we both?
Well, they did bring in Ethan Michalski from the transfer portal, where he's somebody where it looks like he's probably going to end up specializing in kickoffs, which will take a little bit of pressure off of Grady in that department. And also he hit a 59-yarder at Illinois last year. So he's proven he can hit from long range. And I think that's something that to your point is all going to help Grady out in the long run, where he can focus on just a smaller set of things compared to last season. So the best way to mold recruiting and talking about the 2025 season is this question from Bowen Tree, who says, who do you see having the most impact from the 2025 recruiting class?
Ooh, that's a good question. Because this year, like talk about this year. You go.
Yeah, first. So I think no matter the answer, or if it's this year down the line when we look back in this class when it's all said and done, I think the answer is Dylan Robinson. I really do. Where I love Zajic Renisale, I love so many of the players that Jedd Fisch and his coaching staff were able to identify and bring in the last cycle, which is how I feel right now about this 26 class as well. But I look at Dylan Robinson, and he's just such a rare athlete already. And he's already a very refined player at the cornerback position, which is why I've been so vocal about him playing a lot this season and probably winding up as a starter next year, is because he has all that potential already. And I think we're going to see that just come this fall, really, when you and I are back out there in a couple of weeks for fall camp. Because it was one thing where, all of the physicality, all that athleticism is great. And you just think about his frame, where I remember he came up for an unofficial visit early on in spring practice, and he was standing in a cornerback's huddle between Takaria Davis and Ephesians Prysock. And he just looked like he was one of the guys. And I don't just mean that in terms of he's part of the team, as in he literally is already that big and that physical. And that's something that really can't go understated.
Okay, so I'm glad you said Dylan, because I agree holistically, but just for the sake of the podcast and the argument, I'm going to say Chris Lawson. Please. Again, the agenda that when I saw him in spring camp, I think that's the only reason I'm going to pick Chris over Dylan. Dylan is just now enrolling. Chris got that head start. I think if Dylan got the head start and we got to see him, oh man, this would become like the Dylan Robinson show of record here. Like we would be on the agenda every single day at this point, which we already are. But right. I just think, once we see Dylan in fall camp, then obviously we'll know it. But Chris Lawson really impressed out of the receivers. Obviously, Rain Reinsberg looked well as well when he was healthy. Marcus Harris, showed flashes. But I think Chris Lawson, of the three, that's the one that I'm looking at right now, saying, hey, that's my guy. I'll plant that flag right now.
Oh, absolutely. So let's move on to some 26 guys here, where Dusty NHL over on YouTube is asking, what's the scoop on Daniel Odom? And Lars, this is one thing where I feel like Washington is still trying to make a push here. It feels like Florida State has done a good job getting in the mix. I know he's really close with Daniel Odom, the quarterback who was committed to Oklahoma and then ended up decommitting and ending up at Florida State, who is originally from Southern California. And so that's something where that's one thing that I'm monitoring in the situation is, will he end up wanting to follow Jaden O'Neal? Will he want to stay at Oklahoma? I don't think that there's a really good read on that situation right now from at least my understanding of the matter. But I also look at the Blaze La Vista offer, who you and I talked about him on our Tuesday show, as the Everydayers know, and we were both extremely impressed with this film. I think that he's somebody who, no matter what you want to offer that guy when you go and you watch that film, but I do feel like it might be a little bit telling on where this coaching staff believes it might stand right now with Daniel Odom.
Have we not learned our lesson about Florida State, people? I mean, come on. Have we not learned? I get it. Okay, I get it. But yeah, with all that being said, yeah, I mean, I could see, him wanting to relink up with Jaden O'Neal. But again, whether you get Daniel Odom or Blaze, I think either one I think either one you're happy with. Where I know the ranking and the Bosco and Southern California and all that and Madden Williams, you want, that's the one you would want. But, and this is, I'm not trying to, not toot your own horn, but not trying to go overboard with this. But if Blaze ends up being better, I won't be surprised. Now, that's not a slight to Daniel. That's just if he ends up being the better prospect, if he ends up getting drafted higher or has more production, I won't be surprised because that's what we've seen on film.
Oh, absolutely. So I really like where you're going with there. Let's jump over to a question from another one of our fabulous insiders in the Duke Father, who asks, Answer Sonoe was the first Fisch commit for the 2026 class. Who will it be in 2027?
Reis Russell.
Yeah,
the offensive lineman from Valor Christian. The only other one that I would say is Kaho, the quarterback from Lincoln.
Sione Kaho, yeah.
Sione Kaho, but I do know they like a couple quarterbacks in the 27 class, and I know Sione's looking at other schools as well. So I think it's going to be Reis Russell just for the simple fact that he's been up at least once or twice now. Really, every time he comes up, almost seems like he's already committed. That just strikes me as a guy that in that Jonah Coleman mode where just right when you see him, you just think, yeah, he's going to Washington.
So Reis Russell was going to be my answer as well. And he has named Washington the leader. He said that in an interview with our buddy Scott Eklund. But another thing on that I think is really important to note is Reis Russell has played a lot of center at Valor Christian in Colorado. And that's something where, depending on what Landen Hatchett ends up getting, I know he's listed as a sophomore on the roster this year. So maybe there were some medical red shirt sort of things that went on and we'll get him an extra year of eligibility. But having somebody who already understands how to snap and how to play the center position is very important. So if you can get a kid like that committed as early as possible, that would be really, really big for Michael Switzer and just this entire offensive coaching staff. We got another 2027 question on the other side of the break. So another phenomenal question from the Duke father here, who a few weeks ago over on our Insider program, we dropped a list of 15 names to keep an eye on in the 2027 class. And he asked us to pick 3. If only 3 of these 15 ended up committing to Washington, who would you want it to be, expected to be? I had trouble with this. So if you want to see the full list, go subscribe to our Insider program. The link's down in the description below. You get a free 2-week trial. And after that, it's $4.99 a month. So I wanted to split it up and go with a few different positions here. Reis Russell is one of the names on the list, as is Sione Kaho. So guys I went with are 4-star defensive tackle Tevita Nonu, 4-star cornerback Josiah Molden, and 4-star wide receiver Braylon Pope. I think that's great, where 2 of those guys are from the state of Washington. And then Josiah Molden, obviously high-end talent, little brother of Elijah Molden. I just think that would be a really nice way to not just kick off this class, but they would all be really, really solid building blocks for Jedd Fisch in this program moving forward.
I agree with that. I mean, I think the quarterback one is interesting because much like we saw in 2025, or 2026, getting Derek Zammit was awesome, but when we all thought it was going to be Brady, that it was okay, you want the West Coast quarterback, but now you're going East Coast. So I think if it's Kaho, now you're looking at that in-state class of the Eastside Catholic guys. There's a number of, we can run
Liufau Loumoli being a big one, linebacker.
Because that was the name that came to mind first for me, where when we talk about getting Derek Coleman Brusa, that's a guy where keep getting the top in-state players to stay home, because not every year you're going to, where we see that with the O'Day guys, but you can offset that by still keeping, call it 3 of the top 10 in-state, where again it doesn't sound great, but especially with the reach that UW has going into Colorado for a Reis Russell, going back down to California, I am curious, where I can't think of any names in particular, but we have seen New Jersey be a heavy offer state in 2027. So I'm curious, does that come to fruition with another 1 or 2 commits? Can you build some inroads there? Obviously, going Georgia, Alabama is going going into that area of the country as well. Where I'm not going to throw out any names, but I'm just saying I'm more just going to say regions of country on top of the in-state guys that we've already talked about.
So I like where you're going with that. And you mentioned some of the in-state guys. I want to go back to Tevita Nonu for 1 second here before I move on, because that's somebody who I can't stress the importance there enough. Where you talk about, if you sign 3 or 4 of the top 10 in-state guys, it might not be the best look, but if it's the right players and the high-end guys, that's increasingly critical. I think Tevita Nonu should be number 1 no matter what. And I don't mean that to slight anybody else, because I think this is a really strong in-state class. We didn't mention Zach Albright, the tight end from Glacier Peak, who's really solid. Jacova Doyle, an offensive lineman from Puyallup. There's so many really talented prospects in-state in this coming year. But I think Tevita Nonu being a 4-star true defensive tackle right there in your backyard at O'Day, and he is rated as the number 1 player in the class, right, or in state, by 247 Sports. Getting that kind of player in your program is top priority, especially with the way we've seen defensive line recruiting shape up in this 2026 cycle. Having that player right there is a must get, in my opinion. Now, Lars, I think you're ready for a couple of these fun questions, because we got some fantastic ones. One of them from @Nirvan WA on YouTube is asking about uniforms. He says, what was with all the random t-shirts underneath that were exposed in the photo shoot? Explain it to me as if I'm someone who appreciates athletic aesthetics.
If you appreciate athletic aesthetics, it means on some level or at some point in your life you've been an athlete and you've been 18 to 22 years old, and comfortability matters more than anything else. And I won't speak for you, but playing lacrosse and playing a few other sports, it's nice to not have those red marks and all the
those can get a little scratchy.
So it's nice to have something underneath that catches the sweat, that kind of just makes it. I can appreciate the get off my lawn angle on this, but it's, and there's, by the way, Nick Harris, when he had the writing under the message, like, or he had a message on his shirt. So it's like, there's a few other reasons why guys will wear undershirts. And, again, I don't think it's a bad thing.
No, I don't either. I think it's just something where it is a comfortability factor at the end of the day, where it's more than anything where like these guys are looking at it as, oh yeah, it might be a white t-shirt or even a purple or gold or whatever color it might be. It's just, yeah, this is comfortable. This is what I'm going to wear on game day. And it's, as you said, it catches sweat. It does, just reduce friction. There are a bunch of other reasons that like, it really is more comfortability than I would say anything else when it comes to some of these guys choosing it. And if it hangs out a little bit, I don't like just, in terms of from the back of your jersey or whatever, I don't think that that's something these guys are paying all that too close attention to. And honestly, in my opinion, yeah, nor should they. If they're comfortable, that's what matters more than anything. And Mr. Aberney asks, can you ask EA Sports how they couldn't include Dylan Robinson and Rylan Dillard-Allen on the Huskies roster this year in College Football 26, both top 300 guys, and they can't even get into the game? I don't think this is an issue so much with the players themselves, especially with Dylan Robinson's case. I would say this is something where we saw it last year that a fair amount of the June enrollees weren't in the game for one reason or another. I don't remember the specifics around what the deal was there, but I think that's the case, at least on Dylan Robinson's side.
I would agree on Robinson, but it's also worth reminding people players can choose to opt out. Like, players don't have to be in the game. And so I think for Rylan's perspective, that might be the case because he was enrolled in the spring, obviously. So he's been there, done all that. And I don't, again, I can understand a fan's perspective of like, I guess if Demond opted out or something like that, like where you can't play with Demond. But I wonder, it's like, I don't know. You gotta respect kids if they don't want to opt in for what is like $500 in a game. Like,
600, yeah.
And also, I wonder. Here's an angle that I was thinking about. Just off of that, why not opt in your freshman year? Set the baseline your freshman year, and then opt in your sophomore year. So that way you're ranking and everything else, and you can have more legitimacy there. And that way it's not like, oh hey, look at this 67 overall guy. Because again, Ryan doesn't care. Ryan's going to play this season. He doesn't care what his ranking is. And most players don't anyways, but it's fun to look at. But I think that makes sense in terms of, hey, maybe just wait a year.
Yeah, that's certainly a possible angle there. We haven't been able to speak to him about that. So all of that is just speculation. There are a number of factors that could have been in play there. I think that is a very logical decision, though. So last question we have here, we wanted to have some fun with this one. Comes in from Darnell the dog. Shout out to him. Phenomenal everydayer. Always commenting on the YouTube. We always do appreciate it. He asked for the best food spots in Seattle. He said he was trying to expand his palate. And I said, we're not doing one. We're going to make a list. And so I said I was going to do 5, and I have 7 spots on my list. I'll let you go first. If you want to just run through each one and give like one signature dish or thing that you like about that place, please feel free.
Yeah, so we're going to go Joey's because it's a staple area. Joey's great. Good food, good entertainment, all that. Mike's Chili Parlor in Ballard, right past the Ballard Bridge.
Ooh,
phenomenal chili place. By the way, you get a great bang for your buck there. Like this is free advertising. So trust me, like I went there recently, got a bowl, and I was like, I always forget how big the bowls are. It's like I had to take that with me for like 2 days and still had dinner for the next 2 days. So it was great. On top of that, the one that you reminded me of because it's close to my house, but I do believe it is a chain. I love teriyaki. Like
it's fantastic.
The name of this place is I Love LUV Teriyaki. So just because I love teriyaki, but that's actually the name of the restaurant. And I will throw in Salties on Alki. That is a good one because I'm a big seafood guy. So I would throw in that one. The salmon they have a really good pesto glaze over it. And then you get some mashed potatoes with some greens. I leave the greens to the side, but they still come with it. It looks like great aesthetic. And then I will give an honorable mention shout out because I know Steven Jackson, the former NBA player, does own a restaurant in or around Rainier. I can't think of the name, but they do. I believe it's like a crawfish or seafood place or something in that respect that I know I've been to a couple of times, and I know they have good food. I just can't think of the name off the top of my head, but if you just search up Steven Jackson's, restaurant in Seattle, I'm sure it would come up.
So phenomenal answers there. I'm not a seafood guy myself, so my list here is a little bit different. Yeah. Hey, you try growing up with a dad who's definitely allergic to shellfish, and
no, that's okay. Now I know that.
Yeah. No, I was just trying to make you feel bad. So got a bunch of spots here that I want to get through. Jack's Barbecue. Their jalapeno sausage might just be my favorite individual meal item in Seattle. Broiler Bay Burgers in Bellevue, a little hole in the wall spot. Go get their bacon cheeseburger and an order of fries. It's like $4.99, and you get the biggest bag of fries you've ever seen. Just a tremendous meal at Broiler Bay. So I got 2 Mexican places I want to get to. Depends on which side of the water you're on. If you're on the east side like me, I live over here in Redmond. La Chingona Taqueria in Bellevue, phenomenal. If you're over on the other side, you're in Seattle, Carnitas Michoacan. Shout out to Andy Yamashita, by the way. He turned me on to that spot. Fantastic burritos. Loved everything I got there. We had to throw a teriyaki place in there. Teriyaki Plus for me, tremendous. Their garlic sauce is to die for. Might be my number one favorite, just like dressing to put on anything. I actually have some of it sitting in my fridge right now because it really is that good. Free advertising here at the end because I got to do it. The Queen Anne Beer Hall people, they've got 3 locations now. Shout out to Moss Bay and Kirkland as well. They do a tremendous job. If you want, just a German style, the pub food is really good. Love their pretzel and just the big steins of beer, especially if you go during happy hour where you can get a big one for $10. I absolutely love that. And one more place I got to shout out. I absolutely love Cookies Country Chicken over in Fremont. Ballard. They do tremendous work over there. I know they have another location in Pioneer Square now, I believe it is. Cookies Country Chicken and Tat's Deli have the 2 best sandwiches in the city. Depends on what you're in the mood for. But if you go to either of those spots, you will not be disappointed by a single item on their menu. Lars, as always, thank you so much for being here. Thank you to all of you dares tuning in. We really do appreciate your support. We got so much more fun stuff coming for you throughout the offseason. So please make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Well, that's YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music. We're there. We're everywhere. We're updating this channel with new content every single day. So make sure you click that like button, click that little bell so you never miss when we post a new video. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, drop them right down below in the comment section. And if you're audio only, please leave us a 5-star review as it does help us out a lot. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll talk to you on Monday.